Hello and welcome to episode 15 of The Final Whistle. I'm Drew Ziegler, and I'm here with John Grant and James Gougosis, and today we are going to talk about NFL free agency, March Madness, and the World Baseball Classic. So first up, the NFL offseason, and there was a huge trade. The Panthers trade for the number 1 overall pick, giving up a haul, including wide receiver DJ Moore, the number 9 overall pick in this year's draft, a second-round pick in this year's draft, a first-round pick next year, and a second-round pick in 2 years. And the Bears, they just absolutely got a haul, like I said earlier. But what are your guys' thoughts on it?
I mean, I thought it was a crazy trade. I did not expect it to happen. It was really just blew me away. And for how much they got for that number 1 overall pick, I knew it was going to be a lot. But 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and your wide receiver 1, that's a lot to give up. So they definitely have a plan for who they're going to take at number 1.
Yeah, I think it shows, how expensive the QB market is now these days. I mean, when the trade originally came out, it was just a draft picks, and it was just randomly, just casually DJ Moore thrown in. I mean, DJ Moore is a really good wide receiver. I think the Bears definitely won this trade. I think the Panthers, they had to have made this trade. They need a quarterback so badly, but they don't have anybody on offense anymore. I mean, DJ Moore was their offense. Now they don't have anyone. I think the Bears, with all their cap space, they're in a really good situation right now.
Yeah, Panthers have signed a few players in free agency, though, and they're not going to be as bad as maybe some people think. They're getting a top quarterback in the draft, their choice, and hopefully they don't mess it up. And another huge trade, the Rams, they trade cornerback Jalen Ramsey to the Dolphins for not as much of a haul, nearly, a 2023 third-round pick and tight end Hunter Long. They obviously have big plans for tight end Hunter Long with 1 catch on his career.
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Ramsey, he regressed a little last year. He's still one of the best cornerbacks in the game. It's just about how he's going to be in the future. He has a pretty big contract, so that may be a little bit of a concern. But for right now, this season, I think it's good trade for the Dolphins. I mean, Jalen Ramsey is still top 5, and they really need a cornerback. Their defense really struggled last year, so I think this is a good trade for the Dolphins.
I mean, I think it's a terrible trade for the Rams. I mean, it's you can make the argument that it's just as rare to find a corner that you can build your defense around as it is to find someone like a franchise quarterback. You can make that argument. And to give him away for a third-round pick and Hunter Long. Who's Hunter Long? I'm still trying to find out. He has 1 career catch. I mean, the Rams, they're kind of just selling. They're just giving everybody away because they're in a terrible spot with money, and their team is regressing. They went all in for the Super Bowl. They got it, and now they're going to be terrible for the next couple of years.
Yeah, some people were expecting a trade of Jalen Ramsey, but they're also expecting a better trade package to get. Mm-hmm. And the Dolphins now have arguably the best cornerback duo in the league with Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey. And another trade, the Raiders trade tight end Darren Waller to the New York Giants for a 2023 third-round pick that they got from trading Kadarius Toney at the trade deadline.
I mean, yeah, I feel like that's a win-win for both teams. I mean, I think the Giants would have, if you want to give a winner, I'd say the Giants won the trade. I think you could have the Raiders could have gave Darren Waller away for a little bit more than just a third-round pick. But the Giants, I mean, that's a great trade for them. Daniel Jones needs kind of a go-to target. Darren Waller, big tight end, who's proven that he's one of the best receiving tight ends in the NFL. And then the third-round pick for the Raiders, I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo, how good is he going to be next year? Really, he's not going to be, I think he's going to be worse than Derek Carr was last year. So Darren Waller was not really going to succeed that much there. So, I mean, I'm happy that he went to the Giants, and now he's going to play with Daniel Jones, and Daniel Jones finally has a guy he can call his number 1 target.
Yeah, to flip Kadarius Toney, who's been injury-riddled, to Darren Waller, I think it's definitely a win for the Giants. I mean, Daniel Jones hasn't had a good tight end pretty much his entire career. I mean, Evan Ingram was pretty decent, but Darren Waller is up there, probably top 5 best tight ends in the league. So I think this is a great deal for the Giants. I think for the Raiders, I mean, they're in a tough situation right now. I don't think anybody would have given up much more than a third. So, I mean, I think they had to trade him to give him up for a third. It's all right. I mean, I don't think teams wouldn't have offered more.
Yeah, he is that big weapon for Daniel Jones finally, but the big question will be, will Darren Waller stay healthy? He has in the past few seasons, but when he is healthy, he's putting up 1,000 yards a season and most likely a top 5 tight end. And there were some big free agent signings, obviously. First one, as we said, Derek Carr to the Saints, 4-year, $150 million, 37.5 average annual value.
Yeah, I was pretty shocked to see the number. I wasn't shocked for him going to Saints, but 4 years, $150 million. I think it was more on the high end of what I expected. So I think it's a slight overpay, but with today's quarterback market, I mean, if we go 4 years from now and he's playing back to his elite self, I mean, this could be a steal. So right now I think it's an overpay, but I think that could change over time. I think it's a pretty decent deal for the Saints.
I think it's a huge overpay. Like, he has not been good since he tore his ACL. He hasn't. The Raiders have been they've been nobodies. They haven't done really anything, especially, and Derek Carr has not done anything. Paying him $160 million. I mean, he got cut for a reason, but the quarterback market today is insane. I mean, you would not have gotten him for that much less if you were, and that would have been a team-friendly deal if he was to get him for any less than $160 million for 4 years. I don't think it's terrible for the Saints. He's definitely a quarterback that you could put in there and you could win some games with him, but you're not going farther than maybe a wild card. You're not going farther than that.
Yeah, the Saints obviously in that terrible NFC South division now, and I think the Saints could have been that team that traded for the number 1 overall pick, but they settled with Derek Carr, and as you said, they're not going to the Super Bowl, but a contract very similar to a younger quarterback, Daniel Jones, to the Giants, stays with the Giants, 4 years, $160 million and $40 million a year.
That it's big contract, good for Jones, but now he's going to be complaining for the rest of his career, and Giants fans are going to be complaining for the rest of their time Daniel Jones is there because you're paying him that much money. You cannot pay anybody else. That's what fans need to start understanding. I'm a Seattle fan. I remember when we first paid Russell Wilson. That was one of the first huge quarterback contracts. We paid him $35 million a season, and then right after that, everyone's complaining that the O-line's terrible. He has no one to throw to. It's because you can't pay him. You can't pay him when you're paying a quarterback $40 million a season. So if I'm Daniel Jones, he's had nothing. So what? It's only going to be worse now because they have no one else to. They have no money to give out because they're giving him $40 million a year. If I'm Daniel Jones, I would have taken a way more team-friendly deal so I can actually have a shot to win the thing instead of taking $40 million a season and having no one around.
Yeah, at the beginning of the offseason, when I saw that he was asking for $40 million, I thought he was out of his mind, and then the Giants paid him $40 million. I'm not a huge fan of it. I mean, the cap hit the first 2 years are a little low, and then the next 2 years are really high. I would expect the Giants to back out of the deal after the second year, but I mean, Daniel Jones doesn't have any more excuses anymore. I think if you're asking for that money, you gotta play like you're making $40 million a year. So there's gonna be a lot of pressure on Daniel Jones this year and for the Giants. I'm excited, but he has to play up to that $40 million price tag.
Yeah, Daniel Jones got a new agent representing him right before free agency started, and I think that might have swayed his mind. And the Giants, they franchise tagged Saquon Barkley right at the buzzer beater of the franchise tag deadline. So at least Daniel Jones signed before that so he could get his teammate Saquon Barkley back. And Giants, another signing, underrated, I think, linebacker Bobby Okereke, 4 years, $40 million, and I think he's just a great middle linebacker who's a good mic, and he's going to lead that defense.
Yeah, the Giants needed a linebacker so badly. I mean, that's what was missing on their defense. They didn't have that linebacker that could just tackle everybody in his way, and that's exactly what he does. So 4 years, $40 million, that's a pretty good deal for the Giants, I would say. I think it's a win-win for both sides.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like the Mike, it's the quarterback of the defense, and the Giants have been lacking a guy that has really led that defense for a while now. You haven't really had one in a very long time. I think he can be that guy. The linebacker market, there was a lot of guys out there, and getting Bobby Okereke for $10 million a season, that's a good contract, I'd say.
Yeah, he had 150 plus tackles on the year, and another team who signed a few linebackers, the Bears, they went crazy in free agency. Linebacker T.J. Edwards, 3 year, $19.5 million, and linebacker Tremaine Edmonds, the big one, 4 year, $72 million.
I mean, to get T.J. Edwards for that $19.5 million for 3 years, I mean, that's a crazy contract. I was expecting him to get Okereke money. I was expecting him to get up there money. Not that. That is a T.J. Edwards, I feel like, could have gotten a lot more than what he did. So that's a steal for the Bears. And then Edmonds, I really like Edmonds. I feel like that might be a little bit too much money, but it's free agency, so you can get away with it. I mean, it's free agency. That always happens. He's a young linebacker. And I think the Bears, Poles, their GM, he's been going off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Bears are having one of the best off seasons in the league. When you have the most cap space, you tend to maybe overpay, and even though some contracts might be overpaid, I think the Bears have done a really good job, giving players the right contracts. And now with the draft coming up, I mean, they could become one of maybe even the favorites in the NFC North by the end of the draft. Ryan Poles has been doing a phenomenal job for the Bears.
I wouldn't go that far to favor them in the NFC North, but their guy they wanted was Tremaine Edmonds. So if you're going to get him, you're going to have to pay what he wants, and they got him. And a bunch of O-linemen were signed. Orlando Brown went to the Bengals, 4 years, $64 million. Mike McGlinchey to the Broncos, 5 year, $87.5 million. And those are the guys that could make or break your offense guarding that outside for the quarterback.
Yeah, I think Orlando Brown to the Bengals, I mean, their problem has been the offensive line. They've signed back-to-back years now big offensive tackles with Lyle Collins and now Orlando Brown. I think the Bengals, they could be now that they have an offensive line, they're really bringing everything together. They can finally make that Super Bowl run and maybe even win it just because of their O-line. That's the reason why they lost the Super Bowl a couple of years ago to the Rams, because they didn't have an O-line. Now they're getting an O-line. I think they could really make a run.
Yeah, that Orlando Brown signing, I really think Bengals could be going to the bowl, man. I mean, their team is just, I don't see the holes anymore. It was always that big tackle spot, and now they filled it up because Collins is coming back. Now they got Orlando Brown, who's one of the best in the league. I mean, where else do you really see a problem? Burrow has proven time and time again that he's the guy. He's going to be that guy for the Bengals, and now all they're doing, they're fixing that offensive line, and they're going to be good now. They can really go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and on the other side of the ball, at defensive tackle, Daron Payne signs a big deal, 4 year, $90 million for the Commanders, and he's one of the most underrated defensive tackles in the league, I believe.
Yeah, Payne has been good for a while and never really got that recognition he deserved until free agency started to come around. So I'm happy that he got that big deal. He was one of the first guys to sign his deal. And, I mean, good for Payne. I mean, that he's definitely, in my opinion, the most underrated defensive tackle in the league. He's been good since he came out of the draft. So I think that's a good way. Keep him around because defensive linemen, they've been hard to find recently. There's only you can count them on your fingers how many guys are really franchise names at defensive line. T.J. Watt, Myles Garrett, Nick Bosa, and maybe Aiden Hutchinson and Kayvon Thibodeau in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, Payne, I think, not like you said, it's hard to find defensive linemen. He was one of the best. I mean, he was probably the Commanders' best player last year, so to give him that money, it's definitely good for him. But as a Giants fan, I'm trying to think what Dexter Lawrence is now going to get. 4 years, $90 million is a lot of money, so I feel like Lawrence is probably going to ask for at least $100 million.
Yeah, the Giants are working on that deal for sure. And we said Orlando Brown, 4 year, $64 million. The Bengals gave up their safety for 4 years, $64 million. Jesse Bates goes to the Falcons.
Yeah, Jesse Bates, one of the better defensive players in the league in the secondary. I think for the Falcons, I think it's a pretty good deal for them. They're trying to, get a team together to maybe. I mean, the NFC South is wide open. I mean, there's no good team in that division. So, I mean, the Falcons can maybe sneak up in the offseason to have a good draft, and maybe they could be one of the front runners in that division. I don't know. I mean, it's just the division's so wide open.
Yeah, exactly. That division is very wide open. There's no true winner as of right now. I mean, the prediction can really go to anybody. With Jesse Bates, though, I think he's a great player, and the Bengals, they had to see this coming. He wasn't going to take the franchise tag every year. He's been franchise tagged every year for the past 3 years, I think, somewhere around there. And they never wanted to give him that deal. So we got the big deal from the Falcons, and good for him. And that's a good signing. That's a very good signing for the Falcons. He really is. Jesse Bates is arguably the best. I'd say he's top 3 safety in the league.
And our last big signing so far, quarterback Geno Smith re-signs with the Seahawks, 3 year, $105 million, about $35 million a year after his breakout season.
I mean, yeah, I think that it was good to get Geno back. For 3 years, though, I'm not sure if that should be the move that Seattle's taken. Who knows if he is going to be that same player he was last year. I say if I was John Schneider before I made the decision on Geno, I think I would have signed him to a 1 year deal. 1 year deal and then drafted a quarterback. Because when else are you going to be in a position to be a winning team with the number 5 overall pick? It really doesn't happen, and especially in a quarterback-heavy draft class. You take a quarterback, and then he sits for a year behind Geno, I mean, you're set up great for the future. When else do you really have that number 5 pick with a playoff team?
Yeah, I think the only problem with that, I don't think Geno would have accepted a 1-year deal. I mean, he just had his career year, so you would have expected him to ask for big money. I think if Geno Smith plays as well as he did last year, I mean, the contract would be a steal. Even if he plays, not even as good, but he plays pretty well, that contract will be a good deal for them. It's just about next year. I mean, this could be such a huge year for the Seahawks and Geno Smith to see if he can prove that he is that quarterback and it wasn't just a fluke.
Yeah, the Seahawks are committing big time to Geno Smith, and we'll see how it plays out next season. And now we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about March Madness. And now we're back, and Steven's joined us, and we're going to get into the Sweet 16. So we're at the Sweet 16 right now. When this goes out, it'll be after the games, but what are your favorite games so far before the Sweet 16?
I'm probably going to say the Princeton-Arizona game. New Jersey team, 15 seed, shocker again, like St. Peter's last year. I'm glad to see another New Jersey team there. And I hope to make a run, I want to see them in the Final Four. I mean, they're probably going to lose, but it'll be great.
Yeah, I think Fairleigh Dickinson beating Purdue, another New Jersey team. I mean, something about the New Jersey teams, always making the upsets. And I think Purdue losing, I think it was pretty predictable. I had them losing in the second round, but that offense, it was just Zach Edey. And when you can guard Zach Edey, the game's pretty much over. I think it's a pretty easy victory for the other team. So I'm really excited for Fairleigh Dickinson. I hope they would have been FAU, but it's all right.
Yeah, those are some obvious picks for the best games. Obviously, the biggest upsets. FDU with an average height of 6'3", and they beat Zach Edey's about 6'5".
7'4".
I'm 6. Well, I don't know why I said 6'5". 7'4". And in the South, now we have Alabama, San Diego State, and Creighton and Princeton. Who are your predictions to win?
I think Alabama's coming out of that region. I think Alabama's the best team out of that region. They've been playing the best, so I think it'd be Alabama.
I think the obvious choice is Alabama. I'm going to say Alabama too, but I think it's going to be Alabama versus Princeton. I think it's going to be a little upset again for Princeton, but I think it's going to be Alabama-Princeton. I think Alabama's going to win it.
San Diego State and Creighton are sneaky teams, but Alabama's most likely going to win it. And the East, we got FAU, Tennessee, Kansas State, and Michigan State. I
mean, something about Tom Izzo in March. I mean, he always has those magical runs. I think right now, I got Michigan State going to the Final Four. I mean, Tom Izzo is so good in March. Michigan State always performs in March, so I got Michigan State.
Oh, I'm going to have to disagree with that. Tom Izzo likes to lose right now, Sweet 16, like last year, like they did to Duke. But I don't know. I think Tennessee's going to lose. I think Michigan State's going to lose. I think it's going to come down to FAU. I think we might have one of the most shocking tournaments of all time this year, so I'm going to pick FAU.
I think Kansas State playing against Kentucky, they have a really well-rounded team, and I think they're going to come out of this bracket. And in the Midwest, we got Houston, Texas, Xavier, and Miami, probably the most predicted bracket, you could say, but who do you got?
Yeah, very chalky bracket. I think Texas is going to come out. I think Houston, they pulled away against Auburn, but it was a close game. And their 16 seed game, it was kind of close for a little bit. So Houston hasn't been playing their best. Marcus Sasser is not 100%. So I think Texas, even after surviving against Penn State, I think they're the best team playing right now out of that region.
I mean, I watched the Xavier game, and I thought they played amazing. Obviously they had a tough teams in there, but I think Xavier can really pull it out. I think when I saw them play, I was shocked. I really shocked. Never heard them all year, and they played amazing. So I'm going to put Xavier.
I think Texas and Miami are going to be in the championship of that bracket, and I think Texas is going to take it. And in the West, our final bracket, Arkansas, UConn, Gonzaga, and UCLA. Who do you got?
I think arguably that's the best one out of all the things. That's a very tough one to pick. But again, like I said, UConn, frauds. Done. Shut them down right away. UCLA, I don't like them. So I think it's going to be I hate to say this, but it's Gonzaga. I hate to say it.
I mean, throughout this tournament, UConn in the second half has been a different team. I think UConn's gonna win their Sweet 16. I think UCLA is gonna win the Sweet 16, and I'm gonna pick with my pre March Madness bracket. I'm going with UCLA to the Final Four. I think even without Jalen Clark, I think Adam Bonham might come back. I think UCLA is gonna beat UConn.
I got Gonzaga and UConn, and Gonzaga beating UConn. And our updated standings for our bracket challenge. I have 410 points. James, you have 400. And Steven, you've only got 350. You picked Duke to win.
We got cheated.
And me and James still have our teams left. I've got Texas. You've got UCLA. And now we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we'll be getting into the World Baseball Classic. We're back. And now we're going to get into the World Baseball Classic, our final segment. And I think the most disappointing team, the Dominican Republic. They lost, didn't even make it to pool play to Puerto Rico in the championship of that pool.
I mean, that's the beauty of baseball. I mean, even though the Dominican Republic were by far the most talented team, if they don't play their best baseball, you're not going to win. Maybe in football you get bailed out. If you don't play as well as you should, you still might pull it out. But the Dominican Republic, they hit so bad with runners in scoring position. That's why they lost to Venezuela and Puerto Rico. I mean, it really showed. I mean, and in the Dominican Republic game against Venezuela, one of the first games, I mean, the crowd was so into it. That's just the beauty of the World Baseball Classic with the international fans. It was so much fun to watch.
I have to agree with James, man. Baseball is a sport where your team might be a lot better, but if a team that's not as good as you gets a little spark, they're gonna make the run and win the game. But I mean, I think I called them again. I think I said Venezuela was gonna win it. That team was just so sneaky and low key. They just performed really well. But DR, it was really sad, if I want to be honest. I think they played really selfish at the plate. I think that's the reason why their downfall was like that. But I mean, that game versus Puerto Rico, I think was electric. I don't know if you guys saw that, but that game was, oh my God. I was like jumping up in my seats watching the game.
And obviously a very sad moment for us Mets fans. I can't even talk about it. Edwin Diaz gets hurt while celebrating, and he's most likely going to be out for the season. And in our semifinal game, USA versus Cuba, USA blows them out 14-2. Adam Wainwright with the win, and Trey Turner with 2 homers. He's basically the president of the United States right now. And what are your guys' thoughts on the game?
Trey Turner, I mean, I hate to see it because he's on the Phillies now, but I love to see it because he's on the USA. But I mean, he's that guy right now. He's like David Wright, he's Captain America right now. But I think USA's pitching. Like, I'm surprised they even won that game. Like, the pitching is just not good for the United States. I mean, the closing is phenomenal. Don't get me wrong, but the starting pitching, it's like I'm glad the bats woke up, for that game. Yeah,
the hitting was on a cold streak before that semifinal game, and I mean, Trey Turner just put this team on his back. I mean, if he really put a spark on that team, and after those home runs, everybody was hitting, so it was great to see. And like Steven said, the starting pitching, it pitched pretty well that game. I mean, that was definitely the weakest point. It's weakest point in most teams, but to give up only 2 runs to Cuba, I mean, that's pretty good.
And on the other side of the bracket, we had Japan beating Mexico 6-5 in a great back and forth game. Randy Arozarena had an insane catch. He's been an all-star throughout the whole World Baseball Classic.
Yeah, Arozarena under the big lights. I mean, he plays his best. And, I mean, Murakami hitting that walk-off home run, I mean, after they were down 5-4 against Mexico, I mean, that was just unbelievable. I mean, with Ohtani rounding third, it was just scenes at that stadium. It was great to watch. One of the best baseball games I've ever seen, even in MLB WC. I think it was one of the best baseball games I've ever seen.
I mean, I'm a little upset. I wanted Mexico to win that game. I didn't want to see U.S. versus Japan in the championship because I knew Japan probably would have beat United States, and that obviously happened. But Mexico, Randy was looking like himself, like he did in the World Series. A little swagger to his game now. Untucked jersey, playing letting it loose. Like, no, he's nothing to lose. And I was glad to see him do that. I watched him make that catch, and I thought that was unbelievable. I literally stood up off my couch. I was like, there's no way I just witnessed that, because that was like something you really can't. You only see it once, and you really won't see that happen again. But I thought that was a great game. Japan, obviously, just they're just good. You can't explain it. They're just good.
And 2 MLB players in that game both had 3-run blasts, Luis Urias and Masataka Yoshida. And Murakami had a walk-off 2-run double to beat Mexico. They call him the Babe Ruth of Mexico. He had 50-plus home runs in the Japanese league. And in our championship game, Japan defeats the USA 3-2. And what are your thoughts on that game?
Disappointing. Not going to lie. Disappointing for the country, if I want to be honest. I think it really maybe disappointing was when Mike Trout was up in his last at-bat. Ohtani gave him two fastballs right down the middle, and he just swung and missed. I think that's the one time you'll ever see Mike Trout overthink in the box, because you saw him after he swung and missed. He's like hitting himself, like tapping himself in the head. He was clearly up in his head about that. He wanted it so badly, but in baseball, you got to play relaxed, no emotions. You got to stick to him straight. I mean, if he wasn't in his head so much, I think he could have blasted the ball, tie game, extra innings we go, but he was in his head the entire bat.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the moment got to him. We haven't seen Trout in a big time, high stakes game in like 7 years. In 2015, that was his only playoff appearance. Maybe he's just now built like that. I mean, Ohtani really brought it. I mean, that's like a moment we're gonna think about for the rest of our lives. I mean, to see the best player of the last 10 years of our generation versus one of the best, most talented players of all time. I mean, especially teammates. That was something out of Hollywood. That was crazy.
Yeah, it was a low-scoring game, a relief game. Trey Turner still had another homer, but to no avail. And the Japan wins their third World Baseball Classic title, most of any country. And that's going to do it for us on the show today. We'll see you next week.